Matt Walsh recently published an expose on Vanderbilt University's medical clinic that was providing child sex change surgeries. Now, apparently, the university did not deny anything, simply saying that there are parents involved that are consenting to this. I certainly think the issue is particularly complicated. There are questions about the expertise of doctors and the right way to help children. But of course, it's a particularly contentious issue in this upcoming midterms. And I think it's fair to say the average person does not support irreversible hormonal, medical, or surgical intervention for children. And we are seeing this with Glenn Youngkin's victory in Virginia. When parents started getting wind of what was being taught to their children, and this was just ideology, they revolted. They ousted the Democrats, brought in a Republican who's now vowed to make changes. In response to Matt Walsh's expose on Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt pulled the entire website down. Why? Why take the website down? Was the website susceptible to some kind of attack? No, it's just a digital website. The argument coming from the left is that they were exposed to threats of violence and extremism. No, hold on, everybody. We don't want any of that stuff. We want to protect these kids. I do believe that there are many kids who are suffering from gender dysphoria who do need appropriate gender care. I don't think affirmation, as the left tries to describe it, is necessarily appropriate. I'm not the individual doctor for these children, but I do think there is a problem. As we've heard from many detransitioners, people who were told they were trans, received medical intervention, and then regretted it, there is a problem, according to them, with many of these kids being rushed into it, with universities and organizations seeking to make money off of it, and the lives of these children being forever harmed. Now we are dealing with the aftermath of this, but I think what you see, plain as day, the reason Vanderbilt took down their website, the reason why many other universities or medical clinics take down these videos is because they know when regular people find out, when your average person finds out they are giving prepubescent and pubescent children sex change surgeries, they have a very negative reaction. Now, of course, we don't want anybody to take things to the extreme. With Boston Children's Hospital, there was a negative reaction. Someone did call in a threat. I believe it was to the hospital itself, not to the police. And we don't want any of that. What we need is for more exposés, for more people to see exactly what's going on, to be told the bare facts and say, that's it, and have a nice day. Why? Because it appears that Democrats know this is an issue that is very, very bad for them. They are being backed into a corner, and the only thing they can do in the media is try and frame it as though unhinged fascists are coming for their children, when in reality, they're just calling out the practice. And of course, once regular people hear about the practice, they have a negative response. I often say this: if there's one thing that you can ask people, because this is a big issue right now, especially with the amount of kids that are being offered up medical intervention, ask your friends and your family, with this election, how do you feel about child sex change surgery? Perhaps many of them support it. Well, okay. I'd be willing to bet many of them will say that's not happening. Well, okay. Then why don't I show you exactly what's going on in Tennessee with Matt Walsh's expose so you can tell them, no, my friends, it is happening. Double mastectomies on young girls. Look at Jazz Jennings, a very prominent individual. Now, I have nothing but I hope Jazz lives a long, healthy life. I have no issue with Jazz and seriously wish Jazz the best. I want these young people to be happy and to be safe. However, you can clearly look at a prominent television show depicting a minor who was given sex change intervention to know it quite literally is happening. Now, if you're a Democrat and you support it, by all means, support the website. Ask them to keep it up so everyone can see it. And make sure you let all of your friends and family know that you agree with it. I happen to believe that with an issue like this in play, people are going to vote Republican because the Republicans are actually making moves to shut it down. Well, let's read the first story here from our good friends over at the Daily Beast. I'm kidding, by the way. But before we get started, head over to timcast.com. Become a member if you would like to support our work. As a member, you'll get access to exclusive members of the exclusive segments from the Timcast IRL podcast, uncensored Monday through Thursday at 11 p.m. Plus, you'll be supporting all of the journalism that our staff produces. Now, all of this writing that we do in the news and the fact checking, NewsGuard certified, mind you, is only supported by you as a member. If you think it's important that we report the news, we fact check, and we call out the lies, we need your support. Join us over at timcast.com. Smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. I give you the story from the Daily Beast. Vanderbilt Medical Clinic shuts down its website after transphobic attacks. Okay, I want to show you the perspective of the Daily Beast, which is a leftist outlet, on what Matt Walsh has done, and then show you what's happening actually. An Asheville area hospital has shut down a webpage for its transgender care center after a right-wing commentator and podcaster attacked the clinic for providing gender-affirming care. Full stop. What does gender-affirming care mean? Let's break it down. Affirmation means in support of, to affirm, to confirm, to agree with. These are children who are going in and they're dysphoric or confused. Not every single person, every child who has come in experiencing what may be gender dysphoria actually has gender dysphoria, which is why often the criteria needs to be or is rigorous. Some kids may be suffering from anxiety and want to fit in, and thus they just say what they hear around them. Doctors then try to figure out if this truly is gender dysphoria, and if it is, and if it's not, there may be appropriate treatments. To say gender affirming care is to imply that it is always about making sure the child is correct. No, kids get things wrong. We need to help these kids, not just tell them that if a kid comes to you and says they think they're a pirate, do you affirm it? Well, no, of course not. You say it's make believe. If a child is suffering from delusions or a mental ailment, let's say that the child is suffering from a very early onset schizophrenia. I have friends who've suffered through this as teenagers, and they say things like they're being watched, they're paranoid, that men are trying to kidnap them, and they're all around every corner. This is a common paranoid delusion. There's a paranoid delusion that people suffer from where they feel that everyone is spying on them and trying to kidnap them and experiment on them. I'm not kidding. This is a legitimate recurring theme. I don't know why, but it's a specific set of a paranoid delusion that people can experience. Now, if someone came to you and said, that guy, I saw him when I walked in, he's one of them, you'd say, no, he's not. I will not affirm that. We need to help you. Now, if there is a child who's suffering from a medical issue that turns out not to be gender dysphoria, wouldn't we want to make sure they get the appropriate care and they aren't just affirmed? That's a big risk here. But let's read more. On Tuesday's episode of the Matt Walsh Show, Walsh claimed that Vanderbilt University Medical Center doctors drug and mutilate children, castrate and butcher them when they provide services to help children transition. In a string of tweets promoting the episode, Walsh screenshotted a segment of the hospital's trans clinic website that he claims offered chemical castration by offering services like gender-affirming hormone therapy and puberty blockers. In response, Vanderbilt took down the clinic's website. On Wednesday evening, Walsh tweeted that Vanderbilt responded to his accusations, quote, "They do not specifically deny anything in my report. Their only defense for drugging and mutilating kids is that their parents allegedly consent to it." Some online critics claimed that Walsh's accusations were going to get people hurt or even killed. Okay, that's absurd. Calling out something in the media, you can't be responsible for the violence that ensues from it. Even to that regard, with Joe Biden calling Republicans extremists, and then a couple of weeks later, someone coming out and running over a kid, I don't blame Joe Biden for having an opinion. But if the left wants to come out and scream stochastic terrorism anytime someone criticizes them, the same criticism can be applied to them, can it not? I don't agree with it, but I'm trying to shine a mirror on their hypocrisy. Here we go. From WPLN, Vanderbilt is the latest target in a far-right campaign against transgender health clinics. There's a lot more here. And the latest development is that Republicans are moving to strip Vanderbilt Hospital of its child transgender surgeries. I can only tell you this. Why do I think this is backfiring and why will it hurt the Democrats? Because of Glenn Youngkin. The New York Post editorial board writes, Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin delivers utter sanity in new school rules on trans kids. Let me tell you, my friends, I want to help children suffering from gender dysphoria. I believe they actually do exist. I've heard from some conservatives and other personalities, they don't think these kids do exist. They think these kids are confused and being manipulated. I disagree. I think gender dysphoria is real. And I believe that there's a lot of issues like endocrine disruptors, hormonal disruptors, things like that, which may cause it. How do we help these kids? I certainly don't think what these universities are doing is helping them. In the end, these kids can suffer from permanent physical disabilities, bone density loss, the inability to experience, let's just call it adult sensation, permanently, and sterilization. I do not believe that is helping these kids. I believe these kids are suffering and there are issues that need to be worked out. In the end, however, Democrats, I believe, know they're going to suffer very serious consequences because of this. Bill Maher recently came out on his show and said Democrats need to get away from the woke stuff. Stop talking about pregnant men. From TennesseeLookout.com. Republican lawmakers plan to strip Vanderbilt Hospital of child trans surgeries. Fueled by a Twitter report, Republican lawmakers are planning to pass legislation in 2023 to stop Vanderbilt University Medical Center from performing pediatric transgender surgeries. Meanwhile, Governor Bill Lee requested an investigation, and Attorney General Jonathan Scrimetti's office said he will use the full scope of his authority to make sure state law is being followed. House Speaker Cameron Sexton, R. Crossville, said in a statement he is looking into conflicting reports on the matter, but noted it is, quote, inappropriate for any minor to have any gender reassignment surgery or puberty blockers given to them. Quote, your biological sex at birth is your identity. There will be legislation filed this session by many members to protect Tennesseans from this barbaric practice. Outrage surfaced among some legislators after conservative blogger Matt Walsh posted video and reports Tuesday showing Vanderbilt officials discussing gender-affirming surgeries. Walsh, a political commentator, blogger, and podcaster for the conservative Daily Wire, engaged in similar social media accusations against Boston Children's Hospital last month. What followed there were threats of violence against staff and doctors, including a bomb threat that forced the evacuation of the hospital, full stop. I do not believe there was an evacuation. I believe this is false. This is incorrect. I think there was a lockdown, but they did not evacuate. Further, after the threat came in, police didn't respond, I think, for about an hour. So many people assume that it was not credible to begin with. A statement released by Vanderbilt University Medical Center on Wednesday noted that the acclaimed teaching hospital is now the subject of social media posts and a video that misrepresent facts about the care the medical center provides to transgender patients. VUMC began its transgender health clinic because transgender individuals are a high-risk population for mental and physical health issues and have been consistently underserved by the U.S. health system. The statement noted the hospital provides care to all adolescents in compliance with state law and in line with professional proactive standards and guidance established by medical specialty societies, including requiring parental consent to treat minors for issues related to transgender care. Okay, it's simple then. It's simple. In Scandinavian countries like Sweden and Finland, they've discontinued this practice. Then Republicans, citing the science, should ban it if they see fit. And then these universities will not be in accordance with state law and it will be done with. Now, the strange thing is, when it comes to Democrats and Republicans in politics, is that Republicans are often advocating for things that will ultimately help Democrats. No, hear me out. The Democrats are advocating for a position that ultimately will cost them the election. Well, simply put, if Republicans ban this stuff before an election, but they're not going to, they're moving forward in 2023, the Democrats won't have to campaign on it, I guess. Or will they? In the end, this is an extreme detriment to Democrats. They say on Wednesday, the websites for Vanderbilt Clinic for Transgender Health and associated pages were down. Walsh on Wednesday posted a series of videos on Twitter he said were taken in 2018 and 2020, including one featuring Vanderbilt physician Dr. Shane Taylor, calling gender transition surgery a big money maker. Some procedures which are covered by the Affordable Care Act could bring in up to $40,000 and others could cost $100,000, Taylor said in the video. That's on video. It was said. So let Democrats roll around in this. Taylor does not refer to children in the video clip Walsh posted, which did not appear to contain her full remarks. Either way, Another video Walsh posted includes a Vanderbilt plastic surgeon discussing guidelines doctors must follow before performing top surgeries or double mastectomies on trans patients. The requirements include a letter documenting persistent gender dysphoria from a licensed mental health provider and ensuring patients are capable of making fully informed decisions on their own. The physician said, patients who are 16 or 17 years of age who have been on testosterone and have parental consent may also qualify. But Walsh inaccurately characterized the remarks to suggest that after children are drugged and sterilized, Vanderbilt surgeons will happily perform double mastectomies on adolescent girls. I'm sorry, what about that is inaccurate? Let me break that down. It may be loaded in your mind, but if you're saying that a 16 to 17-year-old needs to already have been on testosterone, then they've been given drugs, correct? Admittedly, Matt Walsh is a bit more bombastic in his approach. But yes, teenage girls are adolescents. That's what adolescent means. Adolescent doesn't mean all children. Adolescent means before the age of 18, which can include 16 to 17-year-olds. Walsh also posted an undated video of Dr. Ellen Clayton, a Vanderbilt professor of law, pediatrics and health policy, noting that conscientious objections to gender-affirming surgery is problematic. We'll take a look at this. The Christian Post. Conservatives angered by Fox News profile on trans-identified child, horrifying, evil, and sick. Yeah. Fox News ran an LGBTQ plus Pride Month advocating for trans children. The reaction from the right was pronounced. They were furious. They slammed Fox News. I bring this up to bring you to the New York Post story about Glenn Youngkin. This story has only to do with the education of such matters. When conservatives are outraged over a video report from Fox News, how do you think they feel about surgeries? Very negatively. But when Glenn Youngkin wins an election in Virginia, which had swept with Democrats, what do you think this means for Democrats who embrace not just the education, but the surgeries? The New York Post editorial board states, making good on his campaign promises, Virginia's Governor Glenn Youngkin has overseen a new state guidance on how schools should handle trans issues, reversing some of the last governor's extreme policies. Schools can no longer keep kids' choices secrets from their parents. Gone are rights to compete in sports as your ID'd gender, as opposed to biological. Same for bathrooms, locker rooms, and other such spaces. Father-daughter dances and the like are no longer verboten. Naturally, the Washington Post, New York Times, etc., framed this as rolling back trans students' rights, when in fact it's a rebalancing. It's a clear win for female students, athletes in particular, for parents, and for kids who don't actually suffer permanent gender dysphoria, but are just confused, which too often proves to be the case. Though the individual in question may not sort it all out until they've had irreversible surgery. That's because there's an entire industry and an ideological cheering section actively pushing this as a best solution. Schools and parents need to treat all these kids with love and kindness, absolutely. And the new guidelines say so. They simply excise the heavy-handed idiocy that the old guidance imposed. Virginians elected Youngkin to start restoring sanity to their public schools. Good for him to be doing so. And now we have, from Matt Walsh, he says, Tennessee will become the first state in the country to make surgical and medical gender transitions for children illegal. We will pave the way. This is just the beginning. Marjorie Taylor Greene responds, Georgia next. The 118th Congress must pass the Protect Children's Innocent Act to make it a felony to perform gender-affirming care, in quotes, on minors. If we don't, some states are going to do the opposite of Tennessee and protect genital mutilation of kids before they are old enough to vote. If a person cannot consent, then they cannot consent, and children cannot consent. That's it. Now we have a question about parents. Fine, we do. There is a question about parents. Do they have the right to consent on behalf of their children? And the answer is yes, they do. They absolutely do. In Florida, we have questions about parental rights in education. And there were concerns about schools refusing to tell parents about the anxiety or other sufferings of these children. A law was passed called the Parental Rights in Education Bill, which says that teachers can't withhold this information. The left called it "don't say gay," which is weird because you also couldn't say straight, and argued that it would force teachers to out their students. What do you mean out the students? The children are being raised and guarded by their parents. The parents have more of a right than the teachers. Well, there's a question here. Do the parents have a right to consent? Some argued that the schools shouldn't be giving sex ed to children without parental consent. What if the parents decide they should? The Bible, for instance, has some passages that are adult in nature. What if a parent says, no, I think the children should read the Bible? Well, it's up to the parents. What if there's a book on gender ideology? Well, then it's going to be up to the parents. And that means they may be left or right, that I agree with. But when it comes to the issue of sex change surgeries, things get particularly interesting. How a parent takes care of their child is up to them. And I don't think that other people should intervene on their behalf. There's a challenge here, logically and based on our principles. I understand the conservative position. They think parents are being misled or are just wrong. And I also think we have a risk here too. But let's break this down because there are challenges. I believe there are many parents suffering from Munchausen syndrome by proxy. That is, parents who want attention, so they claim their children are suffering from some ailment or otherwise. Then they seek out surgeries on these kids and ruin their lives. That needs to be checked for. I think there is a challenge here. I personally don't believe that children should ever get a sex change operation or medication. However, I'm not the parent. And sometimes there are issues of the government intervening or not intervening, and I don't know when the right place to intervene would be. All I can really say is I'd prefer the government not to be involved at all for the most part. But that means there's going to be parents going to doctors and doctors telling them to permanently sterilize their children. That's worrying to me. However, most of you know I come to a more libertarian position on many of these things, and I defer to the government not being involved to a certain degree. It's tough. It absolutely is. But I'm going to go with the parents on this one. Now, that being said, the science, I believe, is coming clear. With Sweden, Finland, Denmark, other Scandinavian countries questioning this stuff, I think it's now high time we do intervene. My point is this. If the doctors are saying this is a legal procedure and we recommend it, how could the state intervene? That's my point. They intervene at the point of legislation. This is what I'm trying to say. At current, there isn't any. And if the parents are being given this advice, then they should follow it. Or they should do what they deem necessary. What should be done, in my opinion, is that the state should decide some things are beyond reproach. So let me make sure I'm making this clear. Right now, I think it's up to the parents. However, I think we should elect leaders who pass legislation making this illegal, not an option. I believe these doctors currently are wrong, but they are operating within the law. The law should be changed. Short of that, I don't think intervention before legislation is appropriate because I don't think the government should intervene on the personal opinions of where we are. We're following the science, though, so we got to move fast. I don't think this should be allowed to be continued. We used to allow lobotomies. Yeah, we don't do that anymore. I think what we're seeing now with sex changes for kids is going to backfire in the Democrats' faces. It's going to result in Republicans winning. And this one issue will result in Republicans getting through many other issues, notably issues of abortion, pro-life. We're going to see more of that. I would say right now what we need is for these representatives, Marjorie Taylor Greene making note of this, at the federal level to say, we will no longer permit this. Why? Because the science says so. Just take a look at our progressive friends across the pond over in Scandinavian countries. They're outright saying it. We should probably follow that, right? Right. CBN. Forbes yanks article about teen girl who detransitioned, claiming it violated editorial guidelines. How strange. Here's one of these stories that I think people need to hear. And when you do, you'll understand why the Democrats are looking to lose and they're being backed into a corner. And I'll stress this again. When you share this video, when people say to you, children aren't getting sex changes, refer them to Chloe Cole. At just 15 years old, Chloe Cole underwent a surgery that radically changed her life. She had a double mastectomy after taking puberty blockers, believing she was a transgender male born in the wrong body. Forbes initially published an article critical of the now 18-year-old Cole, who has spoken out about the dangers of body-altering surgeries for children and teenagers. The outlet has since removed the story, written by transgender writer Dawn Ennis, from its website. Ennis, a male who identifies as female, originally wrote the piece for the Los Angeles Blade, a pro-LGBT website. It was republished to Forbes on Sunday and immediately drew criticism for content many readers believed to be factually inaccurate. We removed the article because it violated our editorial guideline for publishing work that was published elsewhere. We only accept original content. One of the leading critics of the piece was Libs of TikTok, who quoted from the piece. But her campaign is based on lies. The fact-checking team at PolitiFact determined Rychik's viral claim was false. While there have been exceptions for some 15, 16, and 17-year-olds, most surgeons won't operate on anyone younger than 18. Quote, minors aren't getting gender-affirming surgery except when they are. Incredible journalism. That's right. Children are. Look at Jazz Jennings. And I mean this in no way disrespectful to the celebrity that is Jazz, who has a TV show in any way. Just to point out, Jazz exists. Jazz is, or was, a transgender child and is now a transgender adult who received medical intervention to prevent puberty. It happened. Because of this, Jazz did not develop fully, and that resulted in some complications. These are all facts. This stuff does happen. They go on to say Cole, for her part, has become an outspoken critic of early intervention in the lives of children who believe they are transgender, arguing these significant body-altering treatments, procedures, and surgeries irreparably change a person's life. The California native, a target of those who support the trans movement, started to identify as trans at just 12 years old. By 13, she was taking prescribed puberty blockers and testosterone supplements and underwent a double mastectomy at 15. That is a child. 2 years later, Cole realized she'd made a huge mistake. She regretted everything. Now 18 years old, she'd become a staunch supporter of the increasingly vocal detransitioners movement, a group of people who once identified as transgender, but have since realized it was not the cure, all they hoped. Ennis claimed in the removed article, which still remains public on the Blade's website, that Cole is an outlier and argued most surgeons won't operate on anyone younger than 18. In mid-August, Boston's Children's Hospital faced criticism for a since-deleted video in which medical personnel promoted what they referred to as gender-affirming hysterectomies for young girls who identify as trans. The scrubbed video, highlighted by Libs of TikTok, was part of a larger series published by Boston Children's Hospital nearly a year ago. In one of the other videos, when does a child know they're trans? Dr. Jeremy Carswell, director of the Gender Multi-Specialty Service at BCH, claimed children will often know that they're transgender from the moment that they have the ability to express themselves. I'm just going to say, in my opinion, and I'm not a doctor, just because a child plays with alternate toys or wears the other gender's clothing does not make them trans. And they've actually stated this. Many experts have come out and said, if a child plays with dolls or action figures, they may be trans. That's one of the signs. I humbly disagree. I do not believe in these sexist, misogynistic stereotypes. I believe that some men wear skirts. They're called kilts, but they look like it. I know they're different to a certain degree. But there are many men who dress in women's clothing who aren't trans and aren't even gay. Maybe they just like it. I don't know. Maybe for some of these older men, it's just a fetish or something, but they certainly wouldn't want surgery. For these children, they may just be exploring social norms, and that's totally okay. In fact, Matt Walsh even said this before. I believe he said something like this. If his kid wants to play with dolls, he'd say, okay, you play with dolls. But you're a boy. You're allowed to play with dolls. You just do what you want. The funny thing is, I read once, I could be wrong, that pink used to be the boys' color. When children were born, boys were given pink and girls were given blue. And at some point, it just changed. I don't know. Maybe it did. I have no idea. Do you know that Republicans used to be blue and Democrats were red? And then it wasn't until I think the 80s that they started changing the colors and associating Republicans with red and Democrats with blue. It's funny how that works, doesn't it? Anyway, look, there are a lot of kids that are suffering and they're experiencing anxiety. And I think social media plays a large role in this. I've heard many stories about kids who are suffering from gender dysphoria, but it turns out they weren't. It was social anxiety from peer pressure. And it manifested in an outward appearance of gender dysphoria. These kids were given appropriate therapy, treatment from a medical professional, and ultimately came to be better without the need of surgery. This is what they're doing in our more progressive neighboring, friends, our more progressive friends countries, Scandinavia. They're giving them psychotherapy. And you know what appears to be working better? The problem right now is that you'll see these videos of people like Billboard Chris walking around saying, hey, I think this stuff is wrong. The far left extremists will scream in their face and yell at them, ignoring the science. I want these kids to be safe, happy. I want them to be better. I think some of these kids are genuinely dysphoric. There are many people on the right, or who just oppose the left, oppose the wokeness, who don't think so. No, they're entitled to their opinions. But when Alex Jones comes out and says that atrazine, for instance, is an endocrine disruptor that was turning frogs into hermaphrodites, you have to wonder what endocrine disruptors will do to human beings. Plastics, phthalates, PCBs, etc. I think that stuff in the womb is probably leading to this. So we hear a lot about trans kids, and we say there's a big explosion of trans kids. Bill Maher says either we're creating them or we're I forgot exactly what he said. Either it's a social pressure or it's something really happening. But why then only California? Why not Ohio? I will tell you, it could be social. I think a social component is yes, no matter what. Even if it really is true endocrine disruption, I believe social issues play a role. But look at it this way. A woman gets pregnant. She is drinking from plastic bottles nonstop. Those PCBs can affect the fetus. I've covered stories about how certain birth controls masculinized female fetus brains. I believe we are going to be dealing with that, and we need to make sure these people are getting appropriate treatment. My main point in all of this, I don't think irreversible surgery is the treatment, because you're basically ending these children's, these human beings' ability to procreate and live full lives. They may suffer from gender dysphoria, but maybe they just need social support. I don't have all the answers. What I can say is we can see that something is truly happening. A lot of it is social, and this doesn't appear to be the path according to the science. These people are jumping the gun, and they're so angry at the right, they're failing to see that. I'll leave it there. The consequences come this November. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.